everybody. Welcome back to the RBL podcast. It has definitely been a while since we recorded one of these. There's been a bit of a hiatus, lots of things going on that have essentially meant that this hasn't been recorded for probably about a season or so. But there's no better time to come back than to talk about draft, and in particular the upcoming RBL 1980 draft. And I'm really delighted to say that for the first part of today's session, I am not here on my own. I am joined by Adrian, the two-time champion from the RBL. Adrian, congratulations on your title win, and thank you very much for joining us today to talk a little bit about the draft.
Hey, appreciate it. Thank you so much. It's a lot of fun. And got lucky there twice with the Knicks and Lakers.
It was a great series in both, and both of them went down to the wire. And I'm sure you'll be back up there next year. But I have to say, Georges Gervin is definitely the greatest of all time in the RBL at this stage. I think it's fair to say. But yeah, fantastic season from you guys, and two-time champion now. So there is nobody better placed than to talk about the draft and to talk about players in this league than the current reigning champion and the two-time champion. So should we dive straight into it and talk a little bit about the draft? And I think we have to
Let's
we have
get
to
to it.
we
Yeah.
have to discuss the pick, then the trade that literally just happened as soon as we got to the off season, which was for the number one pick. So we have to start there, which was the Chicago Bulls sending the number one pick to the Kansas City Kings in exchange for number pick 11, pick 12, and next year's Atlanta Hawks first round pick. I guess your reaction to the trade and maybe what it means for both teams before we talk about the actual draft picks that have been moved.
Yeah. I think this actually works for both teams. My first gut reaction was, well, that's a very cheap price for the number one pick. But in this particular draft, I think it actually works for both teams. I see in this draft, about 14 pretty solid players, and they're all kind of within the same kind of talent range. So with Chicago getting 11 and 12, I mean, they're going to have a picking of a solid player. It's going to be the leftovers, but still, it's going to be a solid player. So they get two solid players in this draft, and they get that crank at the next pick of the Hawks. You don't know where they're going. They might be retooling themselves. I hear John Drew's on the block, so you never know what's going to happen with that pick. And then the Kings, they want a superstar here, and they're probably going to get one. They might need to wait a few years for that star to develop, but this player, number one, I think it's gonna turn into a superstar eventually.
Yeah, I mean, I'm kind of with you on the reaction to the trade in the sense that if you'd have probably asked me a few days ago, I'd have probably said, Chicago, what on earth are you doing? I mean, you've got the opportunity here, as you said, to probably draft your next star in Chicago, and you've moved down to a couple of mid picks, and maybe the Hawks have been a perennial playoff team pretty much every season. You're kind of looking at a few mid round picks for what is the number one selection in the draft, and the potentially to get the best player available. So if you asked me that a few days ago, that's where I'd have been. I think the John Drew announcement that he is on the block and there is an offer, and it seems ever likely that the Atlanta Hawks may be retooling, as you mentioned, kind of throws a bit of a spanner in the works, in my opinion, where I thought the trade was. So we could be looking possibly at pick 11, pick 12, and then let's say the Hawks rebuild and retool. We could be looking at a top 10 pick there again for the Chicago Bulls, and given the team is in a rebuilding phase, they could be sitting quite pretty by the end of next year. But that's where I'm with the Bulls. I think for the Kings, it makes sense. They have Artis Gilmore, they have Magic Johnson, so they have the All Star, the versatile guy. They have the star perennial front court player, and then it means they can add another star, and we'll talk about who we think that is at the moment. But adding another
Mm.
star to that trio means that team is looking rather dangerous and very good in terms of age. If they can keep Gilmore Gilmore on life support as he gets a bit older, that team is going to definitely look like a good playoff and possibly a contender in the immediate future anyway. But yeah, I guess interesting times to see how it goes, and we'll sort of dive into it and talk about the first pick now. I think Adrian, I guess my reflections are to just say to the audience is that what you've got up on screen for those who are watching on YouTube is the scouting opinion of my New York Knicks scout. So take that with a pinch of salt. Anyone who is obviously in the league and wants scouting information, all the draft ratings, player ratings, etc., all available. They're all real ratings. They're on the Discord server. So whilst this mock has a certain order, there might be different players, so slightly better, slightly worse. So whilst we talk about it from this perspective, just assume that this might not necessarily be how the draft goes, as with any mock or with any scouting. But I mean, Adrian, the Kansas City Kings at the moment on my mock from my scout project that Darryl
Yeah.
Griffith is probably going to be the number one pick. I guess your thoughts and reflections on that. Do you think that's probably going to be the player, or do you see someone else? And what do you make of Darryl Griffith? Is he worthy of that number one pick status?
Yeah. So I think most definitely that will not be the case. And I'll tell you why in a minute here, but let's start with Griffith here. No, I think I don't think he's a point guard. He's listed as a point guard, but he's not a point guard. Um, I see that handle C, passing D. This is most definitely a shooting guard trapped in the point guard's body here, but I'm not seeing much here with Griffith here. I think he's going to be a bust, to be honest here. Um, he's quite quick, but he doesn't jump that well. He's not that strong. He can get to he can get to the hole, but I don't think he's going to be able to finish well. And then he doesn't get his team involved. So, he might turn into a solid defender and provide a spark plug, but I don't see him as a number one pick.
Yeah, I'm kind of with you. I'm surprised my scout has put him as the number one pick, and I think it's just because he has that. He has a good shooting ability. His jump shot solid. His 3-point shot is obviously very good for this era. There's some good potential on the defensive side of things, but as you said, his athleticism maybe isn't all completely there. And absolutely agree with you. He is not a point guard. He is a shooting guard. So um, I'll be interested to see where he goes. I agree. I think there's better players available, not just for the Kings at number one, but for if anyone else were to have the number one pick. I don't see Griffiths as that number one guy. But I'm interested in your opinion then. So who do you think is that number one guy that the Kings were targeting when they decided to trade up?
Yep. I mean, I think they're 100% here going to go Kevin McHale. Um, yeah, I think I think this guy's a stud here. You're looking at his college stats. He's averaging 37 points a game, 13 rebounds. He can pass the ball too. He gets block shots. He's a freaking 62% field goal percentage, 80% from the line. I think this guy is efficiency defined here. And I think he's going to be a little bit of a project, though, the first maybe year or two, but he's going to turn into a star.
Yeah, I mean, I don't actually think he is the one that the Kings are targeting, but I can see why you've come to that conclusion. I guess I think the thing that made me come to that conclusion that he wasn't going to be the number one pick is simply because I don't know whether the Kings are willing to wait for him to develop. So I say this in the perspective of obviously you have Magic Johnson, who is obviously still an absolute young future Hall of Famer, one of the best players we're probably going to see in the league for a long time, alongside Larry Bird, etc. He's obviously young, but they made a trade last year to bring in Artis Gilmore, who is obviously at the back end of his career now, so he's probably in that prime, getting towards the twilight years. I don't know if Kevin McHale actually moves the needle enough for them if they want to get that immediate title contending team together. I think if they take Kevin McHale, I think then Artis Gilmore could be up for grabs um, sooner rather than later, because that trajectory of that where the franchise is and where the needle is in terms of playoff contender rebuilding changes quite dramatically with that.
I agree. But I think yeah, Artis Gilmer still has a lot of trade value, so I think they can easily flip him for more youth here and just go full youth movement.
Possibly, yeah, there could be possibly one of the options here. I guess I'll throw my other guy out that I thought might be the number one pick, and I'll tell you why. And that is Kiki Vanderwee. And I say this from the perspective that he is obviously coming in, and he is going to be one of the better scoring wings available in the draft and probably in the league when he enters. He's got some really good potential to build there as well. His passing handling is all solid. The only thing that's obviously probably his downside is that he's an average defender, so he's not going to be anything of He's not going to be. I don't think he's going to be a liability on defense, but I think he's not going to be. He's not going to be able to stop. A George Irvin or someone like that. But I can see him tying really nicely with Magic Johnson, Artis Gilmore. If you had put Magic back at the point guard position, Kiki out on sort of the wing scoring options, Artis Gilmore, you have a really fun, interesting team there. You pack some defense around that, and just some solid ball handlers, and just to keep the momentum going. I think that you could have a really dangerous team. And so I'm leaning more towards him possibly being the number one pick now at this stage. But I can understand why you went with Macau, but that's my thoughts on it at the moment. Really.
Yeah. I understand why you have Kiki here. I think he's the front runner for Rookie of the Year. So I think he might probably will get it. The Rookie of the Year. I think he's going to average at least 20 points, possibly more. He's just a scoring machine. He's athletic, maybe one of the most athletic players in this draft, and he can score from every level, inside, outside, especially that new 3-pointer, mid range. Um, I just don't see the defensive potential here. I think he's going to be exposed in the playoffs once you get to that level. And anyone that Kiki's guarding is going to be is going to be able to go off on him because he can't defend the post and he can't defend the perimeter. So that's going to be a big limiting factor. I think it's going to keep him away from the number one pick.
Yeah, possibly. That is the Achilles heel of him. I think. If you were to select him, but who knows? Maybe it will be Kiki. Maybe it will be the likes of Macau. I don't know. We'll see when the Kings pick. Basically, I think it's fair to say that we've come to the
Okay.
conclusion that there isn't a defined number one pick. And as you said, there are some really good players in this draft, but maybe not that guy who is above everyone else.
No, no, there's no consensus.
Absolutely. So let's move on to sort of the number two picks. Let's 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 rejig this mock draft a little bit. Then let's assume, okay, that you were correct and Macau was taken number one. So in terms of number two, do you think that's going to be Kiki or Griffith or Lambier? Or I mean, where do you see the Jazz sort of hanging their hat on with this one?
Well, there's actually no consensus from this point forward. From any point in this draft, it's so each player is so evenly matched with the other. I think, but here at the Jazz, I think Kiki. If he doesn't go number one, I think he'll go number two. 'Cause I think he's going to be averaging 30 points a game eventually in his career, sometime down the line.
Yeah, yeah. I think if he doesn't go number one, he goes number two. And the reason I say this is that the Jazz need that scoring option. And whilst they have some really really good talents on the Jazz, they are a rebuilding team. And I could see him putting up, as you said, 25 points a game on the Jazz and just blowing everyone away for Rookie of the Year. So I kind of agree with you. I think he is the lock to go at least number two overall if this stays as it is. I guess from the Jazz perspective, I think they've got a lot of changes they're probably going to be making over the course of the season, and starting to think about how they maybe build around someone like Kiki and Co. Will be interesting to see. But yeah, I guess let's jump on to number three then. So in terms of the 76ers, the mock draft that I have up has Andrew Tony as sort of that number three pick. I guess your thoughts on Tony, the 76ers, is that where you see that the player landing out, or do you see someone else jumping in there for the 76ers who, let's not forget, two seasons ago now were obviously in the finals,
Yeah.
gone for a complete rebuild now. Basically around Darryl Dawkins is kind of the main player they're trying to build around. Because I can understand the point guard position selection here, but yeah, your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I don't see Tony being that pick for the Sixers here. And he's a very, very similarly matched to Griffith here as far as he's not a point guard. He's a shooting guard, a little tiny shooting guard. So he's very athletic. He's going to get to the line, but he's not. This one's not a great defender. Tony's not a great defender, unlike Griffith, who's going to be a good defender. So I see Tony being very one-dimensional, and I don't think he's worth a number three pick.
And I guess then, if he's not worth the number three pick, where do you see the 76ers heading then at that point? Who do you think is the
That
most
Sixers,
enticing
yeah,
for them?
that Sixers pick, that Sixers team from last season was so tough. They had those bruising forwards and centers, and I think they're going to get some of that back with Bill Lambier, in my opinion.
Yeah, and I guess tell us a little bit about what you like about Bill Lambie. Obviously, from what we can see, defense is could be elite, rebounding could be elite. Scoring stuff kind of worries me in terms of he might not necessarily develop that out, but there is potential there. I guess if you think it's going to take him, how do you see him fitting alongside the likes of Dawkins?
I think Lambeer here is just so flexible as far as team style here. Um, he can rebound like the best of them. He can handle the ball. He can pass the ball. He's going to be able to defend in the post. He's not that much of a stiff. He's not a stiff. He's pretty athletic actually. So, and he's going to be able to spread the floor too with that 3-point shot. So I think he's kind of a center of the future here. Possibly can even play power forward in some lineups.
Yeah, I mean that would be quite interesting to see how if they put Dawkins in at the power forward position, Bill Lambier in at the centre position, how dangerous that front court could be for them. Then they've just got to fill the backcourt and the wing positions. It's kind of what I'd say for 76ers. They've got a whole load of gaps to fill. I mean, I
Oh
agree.
yeah.
I think Bill Lambier is underrated in terms of being on the mock here as fourth. I think he's going to go in the top three. 76ers is actually quite a nice fit for him in terms of if they can address that front court position. You know, there's free agency still to come with some plenty of decent backcourt players available. So yeah, I could definitely see that one. And then that moves us on to quite nicely the Dallas Mavericks, who currently have absolutely no roster, but as of tomorrow, we will find out who they take through the dispersal draft. They obviously have mocked on mine Bill Lambier, but I guess if he's going in at three, who is the first franchise player that the Mavericks should take in your opinion?
Well, there's one thing who they should take, and there's one thing they're going to take. I don't think Griffin's going to go past this pick, so I think they're going to take Griffith. Um, However, who they should take, I don't have no idea who they should take. There's a couple players I like still on the board, but yeah, I think they're going to go Griffith here.
Yeah, I mean, I think you're right, given that it's going to be the computer picking for them at this stage with no GM assigned to them. I guess the other question is if Griffiths drops into there, be interested what other players and other roster the Mavericks kind of put together. But yeah, I guess with Griffith going there, you obviously mentioned earlier that you think Kiki's probably going to be rookie of the year. With Dallas, Griffith's going to have probably a lot of the ball. He's probably going to, I'd imagine, playing the point guard position for the Mavericks. Does that mean that his numbers are going to spike enough to maybe get him into contention for rookie of the year? Or do you think it's going to be a case
Hmm.
he's still going to be a bust even if he ends up at the Mavericks?
I mean, just looking at his college stats, Griffith is only averaging 15 points a game. I don't think he's a rookie of the year candidate.
Yeah, I mean, I guess it depends on how much of that scoring load he takes on and what the players around him look like because
Yeah.
his usage could go through the roof with Dallas if
Oh yeah.
that team is turns out to be pretty awful based on the players available. But we will see. Yeah, it'd be interesting to see how the Mavericks do in general anyway because they are our first expansion team in the RBL. So we'll see how they come out. But yeah, let's move on to the Washington Bullets, a team that's I think it's fair to say has been through a sort of constant ebb and flow of rebuilding since the RBL sort of started. They obviously have on my mock Kevin McHale as the draftee pick here, but I guess he goes earlier. Who do we see the Bullets kind of looking to at this stage?
That's a good question here. Let me look at. I'm not really an expert on the Bullets here. Let me
I
look at
mean,
the
they're an
roster here.
interesting bag of team, right?
Yeah.
So they've got Elvin Hayes, who is, let's be honest, past his prime now at this point, but still a decent defensive player. Greg Ballard's an underrated player. Gerald Henderson is obviously the draftee they took a few seasons ago. And Bob Dandridge was a big free agency signing. So they've been one of these teams that's been interesting that they've also had a couple of GMs through the life cycle and it's a combination of sometimes they've pushed for the playoffs and added big salaries, sometimes they haven't, and so it's a direction of a team that could go either way. I don't think they're necessarily looking for a complete raw prospect, or they'll be looking for a ready-made guy to go now who's maybe not got potential. I think they're just going to be looking for the best player available at this stage. Um, I guess
Yeah. After looking at the team, I think they need a point guard. There's no one on there. who can play point guard. And there's a couple different point guards in this draft that could fill that role, depending on how they roll here. You go Macy, could go Moore, could go Woodson into a point guard, could go Drew, could go
Yeah,
Sparrow here. There's a couple options there.
I really like the Carl Macy as the pick for the Bullets. The reason being is that he is just a pure point guard player. He's just going to be a facilitator for any team he lands on. He's good defensively. He's got some potential still in terms of his ability to handle and pass the ball, but it's at a good level now. His shooting is he's never going to be an all time scorer, but he can be dependable if he needs to take a shot, needs to make an action. Has a bit of a 3 point shot. His athleticism is
Yeah.
not terrible, so I could see him fitting quite nicely into this team, and you know maybe that pulls the team up to being above 0.500 this year with just adding him into the mix of it, just facilitating for the likes of Gerald Henderson, Bob Dandridge, Greg Ballard and co. So I kind of I like Carl Macy jumping up from my
Yeah.
mock draft into that fifth pick.
Yeah, that assist to turnover ratio, 6.89 is amazing. His shooting percentages are very solid. 50% from the field, 87 from the free throw line, 40 from deep. So can't complain about Kyle Macy running your team.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. I guess then that moves us quite nicely into the Chicago Bulls' first pick. Um, so they are slotted down at the moment on my mock draft to take Mike Woodson, another one of these you know shooting guard type players. I guess if they're looking at a shooting guard, Mike Woodson, Andrew Toney are kind of available. Do you think they go with that particular position, or do you think there's someone else who's crying out to be taken by the Bulls at this stage?
That's a good question. I mean, the Bulls have three cracks at this with these, three top 12 picks here. So they're going to get three of these guys. Whether who they prioritize, it's up to them here. But they need help everywhere. The Bulls. So they're probably going to go talent first. Whoever's the most talented player available. Um, yeah, yeah. I really don't know what's in their mind here, but personally, I go for a nice solid point guard like Johnny Moore.
Yeah, I mean, I guess I would think that too, but then they did draft Maurice Cheeks just a season ago, I believe. So for me, I think I quite like the idea of them still taking a shooting guard, and I'm sitting there thinking maybe this is where Andrew Toney jumps in. I know that he's, as we
Hmm.
said, he's not the best defender. He's never going to be a point guard. He's a pure shooting guard, maybe slightly undersized, but for this era, it doesn't really matter that much that he's undersized. But his athleticism is off the charts. So an athletic sort of shooting guard type guy next to Maurice Cheeks could be quite entertaining to watch. So I have him pegged to sort of dropping from the mock draft here for three into that sixth spot, and the ball's kind of walking away with it and going, look, we're going to have Cheeks
Right.
and Tony is the backcourt, and it's going to be quite interesting, quite dynamic. They both have different skill sets that kind of complement each other to some extent. I kind of see that playing out because we'll talk about picks 11 and 12 later, but I think there's other guys on the board as we hit there that are better fit positionally, and maybe the talent jump is not high enough to try and take them at six.
Right, I'm looking at Tony here. He's 23 points in 25 minutes. This guy's a
Yeah,
bucket.
absolutely nuts.
Guy's a walking bucket.
There are a lot of
Yeah.
really elite scorers in this top end of the draft who just maybe are not two way players, but it's going to be fun to watch. I mean, they're going to put up some crazy numbers, I imagine, when they come in.
Oh yeah.
So that
Yeah,
moves us
he
nicely
might be the
on.
most athletic player.
Yeah, absolutely. It moves us on to your pick, the San Antonio Spurs. So not only did you win the RBL last year, but you've also managed to land yourself a top seven pick. So tell us your thinking on that. Where is your mind at the minute? You don't have to necessarily give us a player you're targeting because I don't want you to give away your trade secrets. But I guess is
Yeah.
there anything you're particularly eyeing up that you think you're missing? I mean, a championship team missing something is always interesting. But where's your head at with that one at the moment?
Wow. Well, we have a vested interest in this pick, so don't trust anything I'm saying actually, because I'm trying to sway everyone different ways. Trying to have my player available here. That's the whole purpose of being here.
So what you're telling
All
me is,
jokes
is
aside.
Daryl Griffiths is your man. So you're hoping he drops from 1 to 7 is what you're telling us.
Oh yeah. Daryl Griffith that bust. He's gonna go number 7 here. But you know, we're very fortunate to have all our players returning here this next season. Well, it depends on the dispersal draft how that goes, but um, we definitely were exposed in the playoffs by Moses Malone. Totally tore us apart, and that was a very close series with the Rockets. So we need some help up front. We're going to go big. Um, I'm not going to name our targets here, but we're definitely going to go for a big man at that spot.
Yeah, I mean, I guess we can talk about maybe Mike Kaminsky, who's the next big on the board on my list. I guess he is that type of guy. He is a stopper type centre, good size. Maybe his passing distribution is not the best, but I mean, if you've got a guy you need to chuck in against with Nater and Rabish and a guard, and I know you play Ramfield in sort of a small ball lineup, so I guess he adds an interesting mix to it. I guess if I was looking at it from the perspective of the next big off the board, but yeah, I guess I would just say I think anyone would struggle with Moses Malone. I don't think that's necessarily a Spurs problem. I think that's a league problem. I think there's only like two centres I can think of who would be able to deal with Moses Malone, and one of them also got to the finals, and the other one is currently sitting over in the Eastern Conference. So yeah, I think many people would struggle with that one. Yeah, we'll be interested to see what you do with it. I
Yeah.
guess I have a hunch that you're going to keep it in draft. I can't see you necessarily trading unless something really interesting comes up that fits the mold of what you want. But yeah, it'd be great to see how that one goes.
Yeah, I agree. No one can stop Moses. What was I even thinking?
I mean,
Especially
yeah,
not Mike Kaminsky.
not even Mike Kaminsky. He might draw a couple of fouls, and then hopefully it puts him in foul trouble as well. That's all I'm thinking of with that one. I'm not suggesting Mike Kaminsky is going to be able to compete with Moses Malone's 30 and 20 nights that he has, or something crazy that he's been performing on. But yeah, I mean, God, great player, and it's actually fun. I'd say whilst it's fun to see from the RBL perspective some of these players who maybe in real life kind of came in hot and then kind of tanked out for all kinds of reasons. But it's great to see some of them, really continuing to perform at the level here because some of those external factors are not necessarily a problem with a computer game, amazingly. So yeah, good fun to watch.
Right, right.
Let's talk
A
about the
different
Pistons though.
and you
Yeah, let's talk about the
okay.
Pistons. So number 8 pick. They currently tagged on my mock to have Johnny Moore. I guess Pistons reflections is that I've always had them down as a dark horse sort of contender candidate. They've always sort of been there in the playoffs, and they've always had these sort of really good runs towards the back end of the season. And they've got some really good players in their roster. Some of them are aging now. It's fair to say. Bob Lanier is obviously 31. Kevin Porter's 30. These are sort of two big players from Harvey Catching. So they brought in last year's 29. So you know, they've kind of got a good balance of old players who are kind of at the back at their sort of peak, I would say. Otis Birdsong obviously was the big trade they made in last season, and Mickey Johnson came in on free agency the season before that. So there's a good balance of team and rosters around this. I guess where do you think they're going to go in terms of trying to add that piece that maybe gets them into that contender discussion rather than that playoffs but exit type situation they've been in for the past few seasons?
I think they roll with Joe Barry Carroll here. I think Joe Barry Carroll gets a lot of slack here because he barely cares, but he's quite talented for a 7-footer here. I think they go with Joe Barry here. You can dump the ball to him, and he can get you buckets.
Yeah, I kind of agree. I think he jumps up from my mock because if you think about it, Bob Lanier is obviously 31. You're probably going to want to manage his minutes a little bit more. Hopefully, he doesn't get injured or anything. And Joe Barry Carroll is probably a nice replacement for him, to be perfectly honest with you. He's obviously not going to be the same standard as Bob Lanier has been over the years, but as you mentioned, he is a guy who can chuck in, get a bucket. He can play okay defense. He can rebound. He's 7 foot, which is fantastic for this era. So I can see him going in quite nicely and being a really useful addition to this team that is trying to make that jump from playoffs to contender. So I really like that idea of a pick for the Pistons. Let's talk a bit about the Boston Celtics, though. So, obviously, last year they had that miracle lottery pick where they jumped up and was able to grab Larry Bird, and the season's kind of started really well for them. And they kind of I think sort of filtered out of the season in the end. But they've got a really good young team: Michael Ray Richardson, Larry Bird, Cedric Maxwell. Supported by an aging Dave Cohen's now as well, I should say. But a team that's probably on the upward trajectory with pick 9. Where do you think they're going to go with this one?
Right. Well, the Celtics, yeah, they're putting a nice group together with Michael Ray Richardson, Cedric Maxwell, Larry Bird. Dave Collins is from the old era here. Here, you got a 6'9" center. You got to upgrade that. So I think they go big, uh, and they have various options there. I actually like that Mike Kaminsky pick to work with Larry Bird here, running a high motion offense. I think that will go quite well. Kaminsky, Bird, that's a good foundation, in my opinion.
Yeah, I think that's solid. I could see them definitely going big as well, and there are some good bigs in this draft. I guess for me, I'd probably be thinking of a James Donaldson type player, very similar to Kaminsky, but he is 7'2", so you can't train height, as they say. He's got some great athleticism. He's probably not going to be a scorer, but let's be perfectly honest with you. If you've got Larry Bird, you don't need another scorer. You just need to give the guy the ball and just hope
Oh
that
yeah.
someone can grab a rebound for him. They've got the likes of Cedric Maxwell who can just get a bucket if needed. Michael Richardson can get a bucket. So I like James Donaldson for the Celtics in here at 9.
Yeah, I like Donaldson overall, whether he goes Celtics, Sixers, or Spurs. But yeah, looking at the next team, the Sixers, I think Donaldson would be a great fit there as well. Imagine they got Lambeer and Donaldson. Wow, they go with Dawkins. That'd be scary.
Yeah, that would be absolutely petrified. James McAdoo would be absolutely terrified for that by prospect, from my perspective. But I'm still rocking the undersized centre. Right, let's move on to the 76ers, who jump back in at number 10 here. So I'm trying to think who we actually said the 76ers were going to take here at number 3. I'm sure we said it was Bill Lambier. So let's assume they've taken Bill Lambier. Got Daryl Dawkins, Bill Lambier as your sort of front court. Got an opportunity to jump back in here. Where do you think their head's going to be at, and who do you think is going to be their selection at number 10?
Uh, well, I think they need to round it out as much as that'd be a fearsome trio up front like they used to have. They do need some guards here. They need some guards to put on a uniform. So there's a couple different point guards here that would go well, I think, with this team. And I've mentioned him before, Johnny Moore. I think he's going to classic. It's the classic point guard. You can't complain about him. I think he's going to be a pretty good starter in this league.
Yeah, I agree. I think he's going to be a very good starter, good facilitator. That assist to turnover ratio at 6.95 is outrageous. Um, scoring, shooting percentages is okay. He's never going to be a scorer. I do like him there. I guess we should probably talk about Larry Jew, who's actually mocked to go there. Probably similar sort of mould. You know, Slightly better scorer, I would probably say than Johnny Moore. Probably maybe not as athletic, but good defensive ability, good passing handling ability. Um, I could see Larry Drew obviously being selected there as well. So I think they will go point guard, as you mentioned. Just depends which one's going to be their particular flavour of the month, I think.
Right. Larry Drew, the thing about him I don't like is the rebounding. Even though a point guard doesn't need to rebound, you still like to get occasional rebounds from your point guard, man. I think Larry Drew only gets a rebound if it lands on him.
I mean, yeah, pretty much. He is 6'1" as well, so it have to land on him from up above through several different players probably at this point. But yeah, no, I agree. I think he's rebounding. But for me, not as much of an issue from a point guard, but I think if you're looking at Johnny Moore, it's not much better. So we're splitting hairs on him of those two players. I think. Should we talk
Yeah.
about the Bulls with the 11th and 12th pick though? Because obviously this was
Yeah.
the trade they made with the Kings. We're kind of jumping through now, and I guess this is the bit that's going to really make or break that trade, right? We kind of alluded to that earlier.
Oh yeah.
They've got to get these two selections right, and I guess who are the two players that you would be looking to here to really set this Bulls team off on an upward trajectory and back towards that playoff contention?
I mean, basically everyone we've labeled as a bust. The Bulls will have number one pick at them. Um, they're going to slip through this draft, and Bulls will be able to snatch him up here and prove us wrong. They're not going to have much flexibility as far as because they're at the helm of whatever's left over. So they're going to get the best of what's rest.
Yeah, I
and
mean,
there's going to be some good players there. Yeah.
I think guys we said that maybe might drop around there, if we're being brutally honest, is probably Mike Woodson, who is currently projected on my mock to probably land into them at 6. We're probably looking at the likes of well, I've got Rory Sparrow actually listed as being drafted here to the Bulls. Um, I guess that they're the kind of ones I think we could see dropping unless somebody from below kind of jumps up. I don't
Right.
know, but yeah, I think it's really hard to tell. I mean, it's a really nice position to be in from a draft perspective, though, if you are the Bulls, because you don't have to make all the hard decisions. You just take the guys who just fall, and you just go, "Yep, we'll take them," and then you just prove everyone wrong. But you kind of have to sit there with gritted teeth as some of these other players that maybe you prefer do get selected. So I guess if you're in the Bulls shoes, right, and you've just traded down from pick number 1, you've landed what is 6, 11, and 12 at the 11-12 pick, are you gonna? Do you reckon you would stay there, or do you think you would be aggressively trying to move up to get a particular one or two guys in that top 10?
No, I think they're pretty content as to where they are. I think they realize that uh, there's no major stars among these this class here, and they're planning on not being that good this year. I think, and they're trying to get a good pick next year. From what I'm seeing here, so these are going to be role players that they're drafting, pretty solid role players, I think. But they're going to be pieces to the puzzle. But I think that big piece they're looking for is going to be in next year's draft.
Yeah, I mean, I agree. I think it's a case of you building the depth of the roster. So I hope you come back next year with another top 5 pick, and hopefully that Hawks pick from their perspective lands them back in sort of the top 10 as well. And then you're laughing. You've got a really young roster with a lot of talent on it. But
Right.
yeah, I think it's going to be interesting those back-to-back picks as to who falls, who they take, and it will really give us a good sense of the direction of the Bulls going forward as well as to what team identity they want. Given that the roster is basically it is Maurice Cheeks plus a bunch of probably you could argue backup players. I mean, no, apart from Ollie Johnson, maybe could be a solid 6-man type player for a contender. Everyone else is pretty much okay to go, I would say, from the Bulls' perspective. So, yeah,
Right.
going to be fun to watch. Right, let's move to the Denver Nuggets. And actually, a team we haven't actually spoken about, amazing enough. We are starting to get into the second half of the draft where there has been less sort of pick movement, I would say. But the Denver Nuggets obviously had a fantastic season, getting to the conference finals and sort of just falling short to the Lakers. But a really good team full of some great players in Rich Kelly, Dan Isel, Spencer Hayward, Michael Cooper. Obviously, was the #1 pick a few seasons ago. Alan Naval. So it's a good roster construction. They're currently tagged down on my mock to take James Donaldson, but I don't know if you have someone else you think they should be targeting or eyeing up, or a particular position, or this is a team that probably feels they're maybe one good player away from getting over the line against someone like the Lakers.
This is a good team. I mean, yeah, we were offered the Nuggets first. One of these trades here, but we turned that down because we think the Nuggets are going to be a good team. Another playoff campaign here. They have some good players, and they have Adrian Dantley coming up here in free agency. I think they're going to retain him probably. Um, and if they end up with Donaldson, that would be amazing for them. He's definitely a playoff contributor right there off the bat.
Yeah, I mean, if they do get Donaldson, let me just put this into perspective. They have Rich Kelly, 7-footer, who I absolutely think is one of the best vertical players in this league. He's an incredible player, really good, well-rounded player. Doesn't need to have the ball to be effective. You got Dan Isel, who's 6'9", one of probably the best scoring forwards in sort of the league. Spencer Hayward, who's sort of aging now, but still a very very good bench piece. That front court is just absolutely nasty. So if you're looking at them up against the Lakers with the captain and co, they could probably go toe to toe with them. If they had James Donaldson. They've got
Mm.
enough to kind of throw at them at that point. And then you're looking in the back when you go, oh, I like Michael Cooper, I like Alan Navarro, I like Adrian Dantley, and do I think they're better than the Lakers backcourt? I mean, it's a toss up. I think, to be honest with you, if I'm looking at it from that perspective. So yeah, I think they'll be absolutely laughing if they get James Donaldson. I guess another
Mm.
player we should probably talk about in that perspective is Rick Mahone is sort of the next one down on the mock draft in terms of a front court player. I guess if the Nuggets can't get James Donaldson, do you think they go to a Rick Mahorn, or do you think they go into maybe a different position set?
Rick Mahorn, I think, he's going to be a contributor for a team, any team that gets him. You know, he's just that presence, that solid presence that's always going to be there, getting those boards, playing defense, and not making mistakes. So he's going to be a good player for any team. He's not going to be the most exciting player, but he's part of that puzzle.
Yeah, I mean, I guess the only thing I wonder from the Nuggets' perspective, I've just put Rory Sparrow up on the screen, is there's been discussions, I think, previously with Alan Duval maybe being tradable. So maybe they go point guard at this point, and then that gives them Laval to maybe move for something else they think they need in terms of another missing piece. I think the Nuggets are quite flexible in terms of what will be around there. So they're kind of
Oh
obviously going
yeah.
to have to react to what the Bulls does back to back. It might throw a bit of a spanner in the works, but yeah, I think there's plenty of options for the Nuggets at pick 13.
Oh yeah.
Let's move on
And I
to the
think
draft.
those are all the good players. I think
Yeah,
this.
I think that's basically the top 13 is probably
All right.
that's the tier one, right? We're saying I think that's probably the top end. And then
Yeah.
we've got the unfortunate Trailblazers who have always been around the playoffs, had some ups and downs, um, in at pick 14. So probably not going to get one of these, top tier talents from the draft. I guess they've got Rick Mahorn on my list down as sort of being mocked to them. I guess seems sensible given where they've kind of looked at in terms of Bill Walton and co. I guess I don't think they need a Rick Mahorn. I think they probably be looking at someone else, but I'm not sure based on the names below who else they would kind of be looking at. Really, would help get them over that line. Maybe again, a similar team that probably wants to go from a playoff contender to an actual contender to contender.
Right. Well, I mean, the 14th pick, this player is not going to get you over the line, but he might be able to, help. I haven't scouted this section of the draft that much, but there was one player who stood out among this group here, and he's actually a late first round pick here from my scout's perspective. But I'm gonna call his name out here. His name is Bill Hanslick. He's quite an intriguing player from my perspective. He's 6'7". He's quite athletic. I think he might be the best jumper in the entire draft, and he can handle the ball. So I can see him playing some spot up point guard minutes here at 6'7". He's a great defender. He could be able to steal, play perimeter defense. He might be able to lock up the Iceman here. So this is a player to keep your eye on. I think he's going to be a sleeper.
Yeah, interesting because on my mock draft they have him down as going towards the back end of mid part of the second round, 25th pick overall. So
Wow.
if he jumps up, that's interesting that there's such a variance. I guess anyone watching this, go and look at the actual ratings because we always have a wide variance in terms of scouting here. But yeah, interesting. I could see that because when you look at the Trailblazers, they probably do have a gap in terms of that sort of 6-man type, energy piece that they need off the bench. And you look at pick 14, if you can get that type of guy to add to Davis and the likes of Hollins
Yeah.
and co, you're kind of in a good place. But yeah, we'll see what the Trailblazers do. I think it's going to be an interesting off season for them in general because whether they stand pat or whether they start to do something more dramatic will be interesting to see. But Adrian, I know you've got to jump off. Thank you very much for joining for this first part of the mock draft. I will continue on in vain and let you know how it goes. But
All
best
right.
of luck for
Awesome.
the draft and the off season, and congratulations again on the championship, the second one. Thank you for your thoughts and opinions from the Spurs point of view.
Thanks for having me here. Yeah, it's a pleasure. And let's keep going. Let's get this season going here.
Absolutely. Okay, so let's carry on. So we are at sort of pick 15, Utah Jazz, who are kind of picking back again from pick number 2. In terms of the mock draft, it has Edgar Jones selected as their option, and I think as we were just discussing with Adrian, that it's an interesting position this bit because you're kind of looking for players who are probably not going to be the all-star type players. these are the guys who are going to be the key building blocks around the bench, around the rotation for any team. And I actually kind of like Edgar Jones in terms of the selection for the Jazz here, because if you look at their front court, Dave Corzine, Rick Roby, Rudy Tomjanovic, you can kind of, if you take Edgar Jones, you can probably move Tomjanovic back into sort of the small forward position. Edgar Jones will give you rebounding, a bit of defense. He's a good athletic player. He looks like he's going to be a pretty solid sort of starter sort of rotation piece. You can throw sort of 20-25 minutes at him possibly, a rebuilding team, and I think it's actually quite a nice pick actually. So I'm kind of okay with that mock selection. The Jazz, obviously, they had him and Kiki. It makes it interesting as to what happens to Radi Tomjanovic in the long term anyway. At 31, do they stay with him? Do they try and move him on? Who knows? But yeah, Jazz, if they can take Jones and take Kiki, I think they're going to be in a great position moving forward anyway. Now let's talk about the Seattle Supersonics. So a team that is definitely in the playoff contender status and definitely surpassed all my expectations for them last year. Got a big off season this season, I think. Can they continue that vein? Most of the roster is still intact, but in terms of pick 16, the suggestion here is that they're going to take Darwin Cook, who is again another one of these shooting guard type point guards. He actually has some potential to probably become an okay point guard. His numbers are not too bad. His defense is pretty good. I guess thought process here is that they're thinking he's going to be the backup to Gus Williams, and I'm not actually against that. I think it gives him time to develop that handling ability, which he's definitely going to need to get up to be a serviceable point guard in this league and in this team. So I'm not completely against that. I guess you're then looking at someone like a Kelvin Ramsey, who's maybe more of a pure point guard, and maybe he jumps over him. I think he might be a better selection for the Seattle Supersonics than the likes of Cook at this stage. So I could see him jumping across. But then we've got Wes Matthews as well, another sort of decent point guard type player. So I think there's three. I mean, my projection on my mock has 3 point guards going back to back to back. I think it's just a case of which one the Supersonics kind of prefer will be who they take at this point. And then if we talk about the Houston Rockets, we have a team that we were talking about, Moses Malone, definitely is in that sort of contender status. Again, a very big off season for them to come. They've got some free agency signings they'll have to probably make. They've got a good core of this team to kind of move forward with. And again, they're looking at sort of the point guard, I guess, because they're thinking backups like likes of Calvin Murphy and co. I guess free agency will be interesting what they think about whether they hold out for free agency to sign, play a couple of re-signings there or not. But again, I think them plus the Golden State Warriors, who we're talking about with the next selection, interesting. They're all going point guard, basically because the Warriors don't have a point guard. I think it's a logical conclusion that they might all go point guard and they'll sort of be fighting and vying amongst themselves. Be interested if they trade amongst themselves to kind of jump up and sort of leapfrog each other here at this stage to just get that right type of guy that they want. But I could certainly see them all going point guard. Like I said, I think if I had to sit there and pick which one I would want, I'd probably want Kelvin Ramsey as sort of the option. Then I'd probably go Wes Matthews, and then I probably would go Darwin Cook in terms of that point guard selection. Then we move on to the Nets. So again, a team that had a fantastic season. I mean, they already have some really great building blocks. They have the likes of Bernard King, who is current MVP and one of the best scoring players in all the league. Ricky Sobers was added. ML Carr was added. Brian Taylor's in there. So they've got really, really good players around this. And I guess they're suggesting here Micah Coran is going to go here. And I can kind of see that argument for it. He's just a good all-round player. And it's kind of what they need. I mean, they just need versatile bench pieces at this stage, and they're not going to get that, that all-star type player at this position in the draft. So I'm kind of okay with this. I can see this. I guess the question is that I don't know whether they'll want that type of position set, or whether they sort of look down the list and they go, actually, maybe we take like a Jeff Wilkins. We take maybe a more of a big type player. I could see a Juwan Oldham kind of being an option. He's incredibly raw as a player, but they don't necessarily need him to come in and perform straight away. But he could probably build up a good defensive set for them. Again, he's got height on his side, so I could see him sort of being jumped and leapfrogged in here. And I guess that's the interesting thing from this point of the draft is that any of these players, probably from, let's be honest, from about pick 20 down to around about sort of pick 34 in this mock, could easily jump up. There's a lot of options. They're all, there's not that more about the type of player and the fit than it is actually about the talent. I think in this draft in particular. And then we'll talk about a bit about the Pistons here. Obviously, as I mentioned, they'd probably be taking someone else in terms of earlier in the rounds, probably someone who's going to be more of a fit to kind of help them now. We're probably thinking of like a Joe Barry Carroll type player. I guess Butch Carter is the selection here. I honestly can't see that. I think Butch Carter's going to be an absolute dud. I can't see him actually making any roster. I think he might not even be drafted, to be perfectly honest with you. His defense is average. His passing is average. His shooting numbers are pretty awful. His actual number numbers look okay, but I could see him probably back into the second round being drafted at this stage. I'd much rather sort of take a Michael Wiley, who's again okay defender, decent shooter, good athleticism. If you're taking a sort of a guard type player, I could see Lewis Orr maybe jumping up as well. He's got a bit more potential around some different areas. If you're looking at that type of player, so I can certainly see that sort of jump happening. Again, I think the likes of Juwan Oldham will probably jump. I think just because someone will look at it and go 7 foot, got some potential to develop rebounding. He's never going to score, but let's be honest, I don't need him to score if he's 7 foot and he can rebound and play defense. I kind of think that he will jump up as well. And then in terms of the Jazz, they're back here. I mean, honestly, Bill Hanslick might be an option. As we mentioned earlier, if he doesn't jump up here, he could jump up into this position. Again, you're looking for sort of just all-round okay players at this stage. You're not really going to be taking someone who is going to be a complete liability for you. You might roll the dice with someone at this stage, like a Lewis Orr maybe. You roll the dice and say, look, he's a shooting guard, he can shoot, he can probably play a bit of defense. There's some room for improvement there that could probably give us a bit of a shot at it. So, the Jazz I could see probably just rolling the dice with someone at this stage and going, we'll give him a shot. And then the Cleveland Cavaliers, we kind of talked a bit about other teams last, but this is the sort of their first pick, I think, in this draft from memory. So, team that's, I would say, probably should have performed better last year. They've got Reggie Theus, who is sort of their star, Jim Paxson, McGuinness, Jones, and sort of Jones and Whitehead. So they've got some good players already. I don't think they're going to get anyone who's going to actually kind of help do that. It helps sort of improve that. But I could certainly see them taking, again, a shooting guard type player. If Michael Wiley doesn't go to the Jazz here, he could certainly probably drop down into sort of maybe the into this sort of position. But I quite like the idea of taking Larry Smith for them. He's just a defensive, okay defender, rebounder, specialist. I could certainly see him being an option for the Cleveland Cavaliers at this stage. And then we round out the end of sort of the first round here with the Lakers, who again, similar sort of thing. They're probably just looking for pieces to sort of add to the bench. I don't mind Jeff Wilkins in the sense that he's just a bit of a rebounder. I think they'll just be looking at maybe, one of the things that they've been asking for a long time is maybe if there's a good defensive stopper who can come in on the wing. I'm not sure if they're going to necessarily find that in this draft or whether someone's going to fall to them to do that. I'm just looking around actually to see if there's anyone. I mean, Michael Brooks should definitely be drafted higher. He's not the defensive specialist, but he is pretty all round okay at everything. So maybe he's an option. I guess if that kind of fouls, they kind of look at sort of what's the best player available for them. But I think the Lakers are going to be in a tricky position here in the sense that they're not going to probably get obviously anyone who's really going to contribute to their rotation. It's kind of, are they going to get anything that's just an actual asset they could flip? I think at this stage, I can't see much else actually available for them here that they could probably want. I mean, Jerry Sitchin's not too bad. He actually looks like an okay point guard that could drop. Again, the Lakers are probably looking for very specialist sort of pieces, and I'm not sure if there's anything that's going to be really available at this stage toward the back end of the first round. So yeah, that kind of brings us to a conclusion in terms of this episode. We've obviously talked a lot about the different prospects and different draftees here. I guess Who knows what's going to happen when it comes to draft time? Is this mock going to play out? I think it's fair to say from myself and Adrian's perspective that this mock draft is clearly not how it's going to play out. It's going to be a completely different way of this landing. But we will certainly see as we get there. The dispersal draft is obviously up for tomorrow. We'll see what the Mavericks kind of end up with, and that will certainly change the position of maybe what number 4 looks like. But yeah, and then we're straight into the draft and see who goes where. But who knows who is going to be the number 1 pick? There isn't a consensus this year. We'll be following it all along. Best of luck to everyone who is in the draft, taking those top selections. Hope you find the player that you're looking for to kind of take your team on to the next level. And we'll be back over the next time. Who knows when at this stage? Maybe that's a bit of free agency chat. Maybe that's a bit of season chat. Maybe it's just draft reflections. We'll kind of see what happens. But if there's any questions or anything you would like us to cover in a future episode, please let us know. Drop a comment, drop a like, drop us a message on Discord, and we'll go from there. But let's see what this draft plays out to look like, and we'll see and to be discussing how that goes. Will the Kings keep number 1? I don't know. Who will they take? I don't know. There's a lot of question marks in this draft, and that's what's going to make it really fascinating to see.